Right. Did you know the September 11th attacks resulted in a staggering number of casualties and had a profound impact on the United States and the world? Here are some key statistics from that event. 2,977 people were killed in the attacks, including hijackers and victims from the four planes involved. 2,753 people were killed at the World Trade Center site in Lower Manhattan. 343 New York firefighters died in the initial attacks and the collapse of the World Trade Center towers. 40 passengers and crew were killed when United Flight 93 crashed near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. 23 New York City police officers died in the initial attacks and the collapse of the World Trade Center. 1,641 World Trade Center victim remains were positively identified as of August 2017. Welcome to Let's Talk About Veterans, the podcast dedicated to meaningful conversations about those who served our nation. Today, I'm dedicating this podcast to Judy Keene, Sarah Winton, and the Bittner family, also our first responders here in Wethersfield Volunteer Fire Department and the Wethersfield Police Department. I'm your host, Dorena Federici, and today we will be talking about 9/11 and the people that we lost. Let's begin our conversation with a dear friend of mine, Lisa Callahan, who is a cousin of Jeffrey Bittner. Welcome, Lisa.
Hi, Dorena.
Well, tell us a little bit about Jeffrey. Let's get to know him.
Okay. Well, first, I want to thank you for doing this. And you've done a lot of things with veterans that mean a lot to people. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think the one thing that I always emphasize to people about Jeff is that, he was 27 and he did so many things that 27-year-olds don't think to do.
Right.
And he was just beyond his years. One thing was that my cousin wrote an article in a magazine, or I think it was Esquire paper magazine, that in his teens, he said he wanted to be a philanthropist. Who says that when they're
right?
And I think it was just the previous year before 9/11, he got involved in a program in New York City for kids at risk. I forgot the name of the program. And so he was mentoring one-on-one, I think, helping with homework and helping them to.
Nice.
So, and I think it was at the 10-year anniversary, his twin, my cousin Pam, had a memorial tribute, and a lot of, friends and family attended, and she had this young man there.
Oh.
And so it was really, heartwarming to see that what he attributed to Jeff's, So anyways, I just kind of say that he was one of those people that really people talked about his goodness while he was alive, not just after 9/11. Like, people thought he was pretty remarkable. He was just a very humble, responsible, just a nice person. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And how did he end up there? He was at the World Trade Center, right? How did he end up he was working there? He got a job there?
It's funny because I always knew that my aunt, his mom, and Dave Whitten's mom were college friends, and they kept a relationship for many, many years. Until my aunt's death, they were still really good friends. So what happened was, David told Jeff there was a job opening at Keith Brewette. And and that's how he. So I talked to Sarah when you did the Veterans Wall, and we talked about, different things. I had met her before, but hadn't spent time talking to her, so that was really nice.
Yeah.
She shared a picture of her mom and my aunt with me, of them, in the 1950s or whatever.
Wow. That's
pretty,
amazing. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how long was he working there? Was it that long? before
Oh,
this happened?
I don't really know, Dorena. I want to say
Yeah.
a couple years, but I'm not really
Yeah.
sure how long he was there for.
Yeah. So I know we hear a lot of stories that people called their loved ones. Was
Yeah.
he in the first tower or the second tower? And did he call his sister or anybody else?
Yeah, he did. He was in the South Tower. So that tower was hit second, but collapsed first. And he called Pam, his sister, and he called I'm not sure if he called Michael. He has an older brother, had an older brother. Michael since passed away, but he called his father. And he said, don't panic, something like this, don't panic. But one of the towers, just the other tower, got hit. And so Pam said to him, well, you need to leave. You need to leave right now. And he goes, yeah. And he said, yes, I am. And I don't know what happened after that. I know that she called. So he said, I'm going to call dad. And he called his father and had the same exact conversation. And, said he was going to leave. And then she called her dad. And I didn't know this until I read the article she wrote. They both turned on the TV and
No.
saw the plane hit between the 75th and 85th floors, and he was on the 89th. So that's just really hard for me to think about that they saw that. And then she tried to call his phone, over and over again. But anyway, so that's, and I had thought until I talked to Sarah just this past September when I met her at sat with her at the Veterans Tribute, that I thought her and her brother and Jeff were together in the stairwell, but I found out that they were, and then they separated. So not that it really matters at this
I
point,
know.
um, but the same thing. David had called home, and very
Yeah.
similar story.
Yeah. And where were you how did you hear it? Who called you? Your mom, or how did
It's
you end up?
funny. No, I was at my first job after, having going back to work after kids. And, everybody started talking about it. And I remember my aunt had told me, because, Pam and Jeff were 15 years younger than me. So, Pam was in Boston, Jeff was in New York. They went to school, but they'd been gone for years. So was closer to my aunt, and she passed away in 98. I always say, thankfully, she didn't have to live.
Through that.
It's the only blessing that came out of it. But anyways, so I was at work, and I remembered she told me he worked at Keefe, Brewett and Woods. I'm sorry, she told me he worked in the towers. Because one day I asked her, I said, like, what's PM doing? What's Jeff doing? Like, where they were, And so I called my mother, and she did not know that he worked in the towers. And I said, well, please call Don, my uncle. I said, I'm pretty sure. So that's how I got the confirmation. And, you never forget where you are. Like I
Yeah.
never forget my phone, where you were. And
Yeah.
no,
I'll never forget that day at work. And I always had a radio on, and the first thing came over saying a plane hit the tower. And I'm thinking, oh, what a dumb, you know what? How can you miss that big old thing? Because originally they said it was a small plane.
right,
That says, how can you miss this big old building and you go right
right,
into it?
right,
And then when the second one hit, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute.
right.
Wait, this isn't, you can't have two dumb
No,
people doing
no,
the same thing.
no,
And I remember your husband was where I worked because his company was going through a tour because we were going to get the printing business.
yep.
And next thing
It
I know,
was so
you called me.
ironic, the timing of that.
Oh,
It was really
yeah,
incredible, right?
right,
Yeah.
right. And you called me and you wanted me to get a hold of your husband to tell him he needed to get home. He
Be-
needed to,
Before cell phone days, right?
yeah, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so I'll never forget all that. And I had customers that I was supposed to talk to that day that were in the towers, but it just so happened I was finally able to get a hold of her like a few days later. She didn't go to work that day. So
Mm,
it was like you didn't know what was going on. It was just such a,
yeah.
uh, uh, so I did, so you just couldn't comprehend that something
Right.
like that was
Right.
happening. And
Right.
as you kept listening to the news, it was just
Yep.
blowing you away.
Oh yeah.
And I kept
I mean,
thinking of
I
you and
first plane, I thought it was a plane. I'm like, oh my God, those poor people. They like hit a building and,
yeah,
you know, and as it unraveled, I remember, and he was a very young person that became a manager where I was working. Somebody said, "Oh, can we go get the rabbit ears in the back to put on the TV?" I
the
mean,
Revenues.
like, right? And he's like, "No, no, like just everybody, like we
Get
don't
back
need
to
to watch
work.
this on TV." Not knowing but still I'm thinking he must have thought later, wow.
Yeah. And you know what was amazing through all of that, through all of the heartache and how as a country we came together. There was no Republicans, there were no Democrats.
Right.
It was the
Yep.
United States of America
Like, so,
coming together. And unfortunately,
yep.
here's another circumstance where we forget
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
we stand for
And I think,
because we have forgotten.
it's human nature that what I really like that they do every year is they hold pictures. Most people
Yeah,
go down because if you don't put a face to anything, any,
exactly.
tragedy,
Yeah,
there's sort of I don't know, you're
yeah,
desensitized, even though you feel
yeah,
that. But when you see that face and hear a family story, I mean, I
right.
remember uh, hearing the story about a woman that she lost two sons in 9/11, or a husband and a son. And I was like,
There were so many of those. Yeah,
that really hit you. Like, these are really real people, real suffering. It's
right.
not just a number of 2,900,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly. And that's the whole thing is you put those faces with what happened,
Right.
and that's what helps us. And that's why I loved things that we did this past September for everybody to remember. We're not
Oh,
going to forget,
definitely. Even
you know.
knowing, because you and I both had the POW bracelets for the Vietnam War, right? But seeing that wall, and I did know there was like 58,000 something, but seeing that wall with all those names,
Right.
same
Yeah.
thing. Just
And
hit
it was,
my,
yeah, absolutely. Now, I know this is a weird question, maybe not a good question to ask, but I know a lot of people never received any type of remains or any type of anything of their loved ones. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was the same thing with
no,
your cousin.
they never,
Nothing.
they never recovered anything. And the same thing with David and Sarah.
Yeah.
Sarah talked about that. Of how torturous that was for her mom, and same with my uncle. He died um 2.5 years after 9/11. So it's hard that was the end of his life, that type of suffering. And same with her
Right.
mom.
But he's with them.
Yes, exactly.
He's with them now. That's
Yeah, that's
the only saving
I
grace,
know.
I guess, with all of
Yes,
that. And have
yes.
you ever been down to New York to see the new memorial, the memorial?
You know what, Serena, I haven't. And I say it all the time, and then I think, you know what? I think you're just saying it. You're never going to get there.
I think we're going to make a trip on this, you and I. We're going to
Maybe.
take the
I
train.
don't know. It's kind of like I want to go, but I don't really
Don't
want
want
to
to
go.
go.
I did go to the Connecticut in Stamford,
Yes.
Connecticut.
Yeah. The one
I
they
did
did there.
there. Yeah.
Right.
But it's very different feeling, and to be somewhere where,
Yeah. That
you know,
happened
yeah,
right there. Hmm. Yeah.
especially not finding remains. I
That's
don't know.
the hardest.
Some people get comfort in cemeteries. I personally don't. So maybe it's the same type of thing. I
Right.
feel like your
Right.
comfort is where you find it.
Yeah. It reminds me of the MIAs on the Vietnam Wall or any other war we've had. They've never found them,
Oh,
and they've never had that, you know. So
mm,
um So when you saw the Cost of Freedom when it came to town and it
Mhm.
had your cousin's name on
Mhm.
the tower, what did it do for you? How did you feel seeing
No,
it?
it's always just bittersweet to see a remembrance, but yeah, it's in your in print. His name is in
Yeah.
print. And it's like I said, so my cousin Pam and Jeff were twins, and being 15 years older, it's almost like a little bit of a different generation, right? I was in a
Right.
totally different place in my life. They were going to school, they were off, they never came back to Weathersfield. And but it's just the pain that my uncle went through. So I was closer to my aunt and uncle at the time, the years previous to that, because I didn't see them often. And then just knowing, I think there really truly is a special bond between twins.
Yeah.
You can feel it with them. And when you read the article that she wrote, I think it was in 2021.
Yeah.
um, they talked every morning. They talked again in the afternoon. And so that kind of attachment and being so involved in each other's lives, her void, I just,
Yeah.
anyways, today she's married and very
That's so
happy.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And,
great. And I can't believe it's going to be 25 years. I mean, it's
oh,
unbelievable. And what is it for 24 years? I've called you every September 11th
I was going to
or
say, I want
texted.
to say that every year it's either a text or a phone call on 9/11. You've never, ever
Right.
forgotten that day. And
Yeah.
my pain is, of course, thinking about Jeff, but it's with my cousin.
Yeah.
It's she would have grown old with him. She's 51 now. They would have had,
Yeah.
she now. So Michael passed away. I'm trying to think of what year it was, maybe 2019. So her immediate family is gone.
Yeah.
So
That's
that's
tough.
that's hard. But thankfully, she's
She's got a, yeah,
she's got a great guy she's married to,
that's
and he
great.
has a great family, and
That's good.
yep.
Yeah. And it what I loved about it too, um, was the way we did the moment of silence in September. I
Mm.
think Sean Kadanak did a lot of the speaking, but it was so, I mean, I remember giving tissues to you and Sarah, and we're all there with the tears, but it was nice being together,
Yes,
to
that,
have that between the tears and the hugs that we shared during that time. So Lisa, just before we sign off, I do want to thank you for doing this. I know it's hard.
and I'm
Sharing Jeffrey's life with us is
no, I
beautiful.
just want to say and thank you, because that was very special what you did on 9/11 there. It really was. Just to set aside that day, with all of the other people there, um,
Honoring them.
families of veterans,
Yeah.
and that was just a really special tribute. So thank you.
Thank you. And so I'm going to leave you all with this. What I felt when this tragedy happened, it was once I realized that it was real, like I said, and it wasn't just pilot error. I thought of what it was like for people of Pearl Harbor. That hit me at that time because it's like, yeah, I honor, Pearl Harbor,
Mm-hmm.
but it really didn't mean that. It really didn't mean it. And
Right.
at that point, it was like, wow, this is what it felt like. Granted, it was different, but this is
Mm-hmm.
what it must have felt like, out of nowhere, we were being attacked. Um, so it needed the respect that it
Yes.
deserved. And I felt like me personally was not given the respect to Pearl Harbor. And I understood then. Then I thought about my parents, what they went through. And I know when I talked to my mom when the planes hit, my mother and my father, they were young kids in Italy when their town got bombed. My father lost his mother and his aunt during the bombing.
Wow.
So it's like, is this what it felt like out of nowhere? Something happened and all these people. And I know my mom, it brought back a lot of memories when September 11th happened. So, what I want people to remember, I remember Alan Jackson came out with that song, Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning?
Mm.
After September 11th. So that's something that we should all think about. Where were you when the world stopped turning? And don't
Right.
ever forget,
Right.
um, to remember, because if we forget, the next generations will never remember.
Right.
So it's up to us to remember and to share it. And that's what I'm hoping we get from a lot of these podcasts with veterans and things going on. So again, thank you, Lisa. And
Well, thank you, Dorena. Thank you for doing this, because I think that's like, I think that that's exactly what it does, is 9/11 and the personal, it being so personal to me has made me think differently about Pearl Harbor and Vietnam and, different tragedies that before, of course you have sympathy and compassion, but it puts it in a different perspective.
yes, a whole different perspective.
Yeah.
So I want to thank everybody that's watching this. So this is Dorena Federici on Let's Talk About Veterans. And thank you for listening. May we all continue to honor and support all who served. So until next time, everybody have a great day, and I will see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.